Hello and welcome to the outside of my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. Capturing a photograph in harsh direct sunlight has its own challenges. However, with the aid of a few techniques, it's possible to embrace the quality of the light and produce a result worthy of the effort. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay. So I've got this medium format camera with a 120mm lens. So the equivalent for a full frame would be about 75mm. That'll give you a reasonable working distance. Now at first sight, this may not look that photogenic, but just by singling out a specific part of the flowers here, you can actually make a reasonable picture of it, I think. So what I want to do is set my camera up about here somewhere. Now fairly obviously it's a bright sunny day today, so I don't really need a tripod, but I'm going to use this one because it'll make it easier for me just to demonstrate what it is that I'm doing. So I'm just going to pop the camera on the top of the tripod like that. So with that roughly in position, what I'm going to do is just have a look through the viewfinder here. So the first thing I'll do is just go for a rough focus. I'm just going to do that manually. Here we are. And I'll just adjust the camera so it's pointing precisely where I want it. There we go. Okay, so the next thing to do will be to think about an exposure. Now obviously we've got this rather harsh sunlight at the moment. So what I'm going to do is set up the exposure on the camera here. So I have a meter in the front here. So at the moment I'm on F8, full manual mode, ISO 100 and a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second. So I'm just going to adjust the shutter speed down to about 200th, something like that. I want the meter to read just under. Now I'm doing that on purpose because on a bright day like this it's very easy to blow out the highlights, and with any form of digital camera you're just not going to have the dynamic range to capture everything. So you want to really make sure that if anything you underexpose it. Okay, so just with those settings I'll just grab an image and see what we get. Okay, so we can see on here that we're getting a reasonable picture, and if I bring up the histogram on the back of the camera, you should be able to see that we've got lots of space down this end, which is what I want. But the image is a little confused. There is no separation between the main foreground subject and the background. Now in the original image, the background was black. Now that was achieved with the aid of some black material. Now I have a couple of pieces here, and one of the things that you may be able to make out even on the video is that although this is black cloth and this is a piece of black card, they're not appearing black. They appear sort of grey, and that's because of the extremely harsh sunlight that we've got at the moment. So let me just position these behind the subject just to show you what you would get. So I've just positioned these on this stand at the back, just for convenience really. Okay, so let's just grab an image with the same settings as I had before, just to show you what you get. There you are, and I think you can see from that even the black cloth isn't that black, and the black card just looks like a piece of grey card really. So we need something which is an awful lot blacker, which is where this comes in. This is a piece of high-tech black material which has all of its fibres specifically aligned perpendicular to its surface. In other words, as black as you're going to get. Okay, so let's just swap this for these two pieces. Okay, so let's swap that out, and even on here you should be able to see that if I hold this black cloth in there, now the black cloth looks grey. in comparison to the black sheet that I have there. Okay, so once again with exactly the same settings, I'll just grab an image, we'll see what we get this time. And yes, there we are. That's looking a lot better. Now I'm using the same settings as I had before because the light obviously falling on the foreground here hasn't changed much. If you just rely on the auto exposure in your camera, then it will try and make this black grey, which is not what you want. So always take the exposure before you insert the black background. Okay, so this is coming along, but it's still maybe a little harsh. So what I'm going to do now is just use one of these 5-in-1 reflectors, and within that you get this type of scrim, which is actually around about a one-stop diffusion material. So if I just, for instance, hold this up, you should be able to see that I can cast a shadow across the whole of the subject there, including the background. Now that shadow will be about one stop. So what I'm going to do is just add one stop to the exposure, which I can do by changing the shutter speed from 1/200th of a second to 1/100th of a second. So with that change to the exposure made, what I can do now is just hold this in position and at the same time grab an image. There we go. So that's made quite a large difference to the quality of the light on the subject. Now if I just zoom all the way in, we can have a good look at the image, and you can see that it's possibly a little bit out of focus. So just to help with that focus, what I'm going to do is just increase the aperture. So I'm going to change the aperture from f8 to f16. Now that's a 2-stop change, so to compensate for that, I'm just going to change the ISO from 100 to 400. Okay, so with those two changes made, once again I'll put the diffuser in position like that, and we'll just grab an image. Okay, so I think that's really coming along now, and you can see the difference that that has made to the image. If I go back to the previous one, now we look at this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just for demonstration purposes, is I'm going to set the camera up so that it takes a sequence of 5 pictures, all at slightly different exposures. The aperture will stay exactly the same, it will just change the shutter speed. Okay, so I'll just put the diffuser in position and we'll give that a go. There we are. Okay, so that should give me a bit of latitude to get the exposure absolutely spot on. Okay, so for actually capturing the image, that's it. So what I'm going to do now is go into Photoshop and just do the bare minimum of post-production, and we'll have a look at the results we've got. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up the files of the images that I captured earlier. Okay, so this is the base image, the first one that I captured, and then we have this, which illustrates the difference in reflectance of the different materials. So this is the card, and if you look at the info, you can see that this is nowhere near black, so it's around about 50% grey. And then we have the cloth, which is slightly better, but still more grey than black. And then on this one, we've replaced the cloth with the high-tech material, which is much, much darker. Again, if you look at the info panel, you can see that I'm getting single digits here. And this is in bright sunlight. So then if I just briefly go through the others, and then we have this, which is the application of the one-stop scrim, which has given us a very soft light, which is rather nice, I think. If I just zoom into that, yes, you can see that this is a particularly nice rendition, I think we're getting from that. Okay, and then I have the series of 5 images which I took to illustrate the differences in exposure. This is 2 stops under, 1 stop under, allegedly the correct exposure, 1 stop over, and 2 stops over. So just to illustrate the point, if I take this one which is 2 stops over, and we put that into the camera raw filter, and then in here I try and correct that by taking the exposure back down by 2 stops. There we go. You can see that the whole image looks a little washed out. You could feasibly correct it a little more with contrast. Let's try doing that. But a lot of the information has been lost. Now conversely, if I go to the one which is 2 stops under and do the same thing in camera raw, and now take it up by 2 stops. Okay, it's a bit saturated, but at least it's a reasonable image, and you've got lots of detail still in the colours. Again, you could feasibly just take that back a little in the contrast, but you can get a reasonable image. So you're always better off trying to underexpose than overexpose, because you can always save it in post-production. So if we just go on to this one, which is the base exposure, we've got a reasonable image here. So what I'm going to do is just pick a crop for this, and I think this would work with a square crop, so that's what I'm going to pick. I'm just going to tighten it up around the subject here, something like that. I'll just click on OK. So having done that, I'm just going to zoom in and just remove these bits on the edge of the frame here. And again, an easy way to do that, as this is almost black anyway, would be just to add another layer, go onto my base layer here, take a sample of the background, so go onto the layer and then pick a paintbrush and just paint that out. There. And there we have it. So with careful consideration of the exposure to make sure that I don't blow out any of the highlights, and also diffusing the harsh sunlight, I've been able to capture an image which has a full range of tones, and thanks to the black background stands out as a subject in its own right. And I think overall that's worked out rather well. Okay, well I hope you like watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.